Phil Wegmann starts us off here on these 2020 contenders. And Phil, it's good to see you. It's like Back to the Future with Bernie Sanders. He kind of started this whole deal when it comes to what we're hearing from many others on the left.
Absolutely. Bernie Sanders started this, and the question now that I'm hearing from a lot of pollsters and analysts on the Democratic side is that it's possible that he might be a victim of his own success, because like you mentioned a second ago, he pioneered so many of these issues. Think about things like Medicare for all, free college tuition, definitely taking a shot at millionaires and billionaires. And what was considered this sort of radicalism just a couple years ago is now very much so sort of Democratic Party orthodoxy. And so the fear here from some who are supporters of Bernie Sanders is that he might not have so much of a lane because so many people have adopted similar policy positions.
Yeah, they're following him into that lane, and maybe, I guess the theory is kind of passing him by. It's interesting, though, it's becoming this litmus test almost for candidates early on to say, it's funny that this is actually happening, but are you a socialist? Bernie Sanders has said for years, yeah, I am. He's actually not a Democrat. He's a Democratic socialist. And, you know, up in New Hampshire, we've seen Kamala Harris, for example, say, no, I'm not. So we'll see how those candidates kind of shake out on this. But I guess at the end, right, their policies will have to speak to that.
Absolutely, and this is going to be a bellwether issue. We saw last night in Miami, President Trump zeroed in on the socialism issue, repeating his State of the Union pledge that this country would never become a socialist nation. And then earlier this morning, Kayleigh McEnany, in her role as campaign spokesman, she reiterated that pledge. And so Republicans are going to be pushing not just Bernie Sanders, but the entire field to answer the question, why, if socialism is failing in South America, would a different form of socialism, democratic socialism, succeed in this country? I think it's going to be a very interesting question to watch.
You bring up a good point. I know you get a chance to speak to officials in the White House. It seems they really like that dynamic or matchup, or just being able to keep it simple and say, yep, we're for capitalism, they're for socialism. It's funny, on the polling, at least for now, the capitalism still wins, although some of these policies, individual policies, are quite popular.
And that's something to keep a close eye on, especially as we see more and more millennials and Generation Z kids actually coming to the polls, because they didn't see the Berlin Wall fall like their parents did. A lot of these younger voters don't have the same sort of knee-jerk reaction ingrained in them. And so it's going to be very important for Republicans to, win the argument on this issue. But again, that requires defining what socialism actually is.
But the White House isn't worried about the growing popularity of some of those programs, right? From what you pick up, they like the socialism versus capitalism argument for them. They almost feel like it's a political gift.
Well, I think right now it certainly is, when you have Venezuela in the backdrop, and when you see that Republicans are managing a very competitive economy right now. They think that this is a good argument for them to make, and right now it certainly seems so.
All right, Phil, good to see you. Phil Wegmann, Real Clear Politics out of Washington.